Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
How are you getting on?
I'm good.
You're a bit hoarse. Yeah.
Did you? A bit hoarse. I was.
Did you trouble getting out of the ground? You were out. Go on.
I was cleaning out the hen house there again.
You were.
So I'm down at my mum's here, so I was rushing in to get on. But anyway, I'm here now.
Were you actually cleaning out the hen house?
Correct, I was.
Man. I was surprised to hear that for the reason for being hoarse after events last night. It sounded like an unbelievable atmosphere down there.
Yeah, it was really special. I think obviously the performance then kind of added to the whole occasion. There was a little bit of nervousness when you meet people going in, but what would the performance like? Would we be in trouble against a very powerful South African side with 14 Springboks and their 23? A lot of those players that played last night for South Africa were have been very good in the URC. We've seen them performing really well, and so yeah, I was a little bit nervous beforehand, but everybody was excited by it. And of course, you'll meet a few die-hard Munster fans who say, "No, we'll rise to the occasion. It'll be great tonight. We'll get a win." And I just thought it was it was really special. Anybody who was there will talk about this for a long time again.
Is it too easy to start talking about like playing more games at Páirc Uí Chaoimh off the back of last night, given everything that happened, the magnitude of it? Or conversely, I think Munster netted, I don't know, was it 150 grand out of it last night? They might get more, interestingly, if it was like a Heineken Cup game or something down the track. Do you think, despite all the work that's gone on to separate Cork and Limerick, that maybe they should look at going back down the track?
Look, I think the only way it'll happen is if there's knockout stages of URC or Europe in particular. I think what's more pressing for the current Munster group is getting performances and getting consistency, and trying to get league points and climb up the table a little bit. So it was a special night for Cork, and a lot of people are kind of talking about this Cork-Limerick divide. And look, you know yourself and Adrian in sport, when results aren't going well for any sporting team at any level, there's always little things crop up and side arguments for certain ways things can be done better. Cork people deserved that last night. It was very special for them. There is a lot of talk about Limerick and the high performance centre being in Limerick, and I'm sure people in Cork would prefer if it was the other way around. I'm a Tip man. I prefer if it was in Tipperary. And it's a debate that went on for a long time. When Moss beat us in 2004, there was probably 8-10 players sat down with the management to try and go through where we can get better, why did we come up short again, in that semi-final. And one of the big talking points was one centre, either in Cork or Limerick or outside either county as well. So
has it almost come full circle, Quinny, from that absolutely valid point that you make, the tension that was between the two areas at that point, and players been based in different places? Everybody accepts now Limerick is the home, but has it almost come full circle to the point that they could go back to Cork now that it's moved on enough?
Look, the high performance centre is in Limerick, whether people like that or not, that's where it is. But I think certainly sharing the games a little bit more. There's Musgrave Park had the Zebra game this year, the warm-up games, and it is difficult at times for people to go either way. I think probably with the road between Cork and Limerick, it's tricky. It's a good hour and a half, a good hour and 40 minutes, sometimes 2 hours if people are coming from West Cork. So it's a big county. So yeah, maybe they can share the games a little bit more. But obviously, if you have big games and European games, it's difficult to bring them to Musgrave because of the capacity. And maybe Páirc Uí Chaoimh will be an option going forward, and I think it'll maybe appease everybody. I think the whole occasion last night was really special, but that's up to the GA as well. And you're going down a different road there, kind of having regular games there. I think it was a one-off game last night. It was very successful. The parking and traffic situation was chaotic, but the stadium was wonderful and it was a great atmosphere. So I just think it'll come into play for if they get into knockout stages and have to have a bigger capacity. And just look back at Toulouse, the Toulouse game in May, where it had to be moved to Dublin. That was over the Ed Sheeran concert, but for semi-finals you have to have a certain capacity and nominated stadium in your home country. It's not a home advantage now anymore, so it certainly could happen again, and I'm sure it'd be a success again if it did happen.
As a tip man, as you said, Quinny, must have been quite a special moment to see Cashel's own Diarmuid Barron cross the line for a try in a game of that magnitude.
Yeah, well, as a tip man, Shane, I'm going to say this: Semple Stadium next for a Munster game. I'm pushing hard for that. Yeah, Diarmuid Barron was excellent. It was brilliant to see him score. But just in general, all the players, they were up against very, very big players, physical players, aggressive players, and they had to play with a pace and a tempo last night, and their skill execution was really good. I think someone like Mike Prendergast now would be really, really pleased. The camera went to him a few times and you could see his reaction, because he's probably seen a bit of this in training since the start of the season. It's broken down in a lot of games, and I think to have that ability to play with a bit more ambition and shape and get the attack better off phase play, and players working hard to get into position. You know, Shane Daly was brilliant coming in off the wing last night, handling ball in midfield, giving little passes, and there was a couple of occasions where they could have scored another couple of tries. So I think...
Quinny, can I just ask, sorry to interrupt, can I just ask you about that point, just about the freedom that they were playing with? Do you think that relates, because Paddy Patterson afterwards, amongst other things, was talking about that element of the shot to nothing aspect, and the pressure was off. So just on that, was that a function of the one-off nature of the game last night and ultimately not having a knock on bigger, more important things? Or is it, like Jack O'Donoghue was talking about afterwards, the end of block one of games, the end of block one of training, the bedding in of the plan? Because I think that's the thing that Munster fans are keen to know this morning. Is it a portent of better things to come, or was it because they were playing an exhibition game?
No, I think it is a sign of better things to come, Adrian, because, you know, in covering a lot of the Munster games this year, even going right back to the first one, the Cardiff game, where you have a little bit of rust, a lot of the shape that they were trying to achieve was breaking down maybe with the second last pass or the last pass. And the more you rep things in training and the more confidence you get, and when you get a little bit of continuity in selection, these things start to improve a little bit. I think nobody is saying that Munster have incredible X-factor players and can go wide all the time. But the little wraparound passes and the type of passes were sticking a lot more. Of course, it broke down once or twice last night. South Africa were very aggressive in their line speed, but I think it's certainly a positive sign of better things to come. That, you know, they can keep the ball alive, and you can. Ireland are a perfect example as a team who've really kind of gone on to a different level in the way their shape is, their attack, the way their wingers come in off the sideline, and they can contribute as an extra man in that back line. And even with a very aggressive rush defence, that you have to make these passes and make sure they're on the money. So a lot of the time last night, people were kind of, going, wow, that's brilliant. These passes were sticking. So without getting too carried away, I think it's a continuation of what they were trying to do. And a lot of this stuff was breaking down in the last number of weeks. So it takes a little bit of time. You know, you have to remember, Adrian, these players were programmed into a direct approach, a kicking game, and not doing this on a continuous level. And, you know, people talk about a change of game plan. I think the change of game plan is just better shape, and players who run dummy lines are an option to carry the ball as well, and just overall increasing that work rate and that fitness to get in better positions. And, you know, their offloads have improved, lots of parts of it. I think if you look at one of the stats in the first 7 games, scoring tries and scoring points have been a problem for them. So in one hand, it's been a strength, a real positive sign. On the other hand, then the stats would say that it's an area that they've been weak because they haven't been scoring points and tries. But I think if you analyse the games, you can see that shape is gradually coming and the players are getting a bit more comfortable. But that requires fitness and work rate. We spoke about that during a number of occasions. The players looked a little bit flat-footed and a little bit lethargic at the start, trying to play this type of game. last night in dreadful conditions, and they executed it much better. So they've got to try and build on that.
One last one for me on that game before we go on to talk about Ireland. With Ben Healy, like looking at him last night, I was scratching my head wondering, how's this fella third choice at Munster, and how are they going to hang on to him in that position? He'll see plenty of game time, but maybe not for the bigger matches. What's the future for Ben Healy, do you think?
Well, someone like Ben Healy is a very talented player. I think he had a really poor cameo against Leinster when he came off the bench. Was soft in the tackle for Luke McGrath's try, dropped the ball twice, made a couple of mistakes, and that can happen anyone. It can happen anyone. But what Ben has to do is probably realise that you can't wait for a reaction every time. So that's the standard now. He was superb last night, even defensively, which is not one of his biggest strengths for a big man. He was really, really good last night. He had a little bit of edge to him. And you see, when you're a young player, Adrian, I think, and Paul O'Connell always spoke to us about that, and I always was intrigued by what he said about getting the emotional balance right as a sports person. It's difficult to be really, really kind of psyched up and fired up. And Munster would have been psyched up and fired up last night with fear, the occasion, the team they're playing, and it generates a kind of a real spark inside you to be on it, and to be really, really kind of up for the game. It's hard to do that every week, to get that big emotional fire going. And you learn it as young players as you go on, to kind of get that to a really good level in the games that are hard to get motivated for, in a sense where there is no crowd generating an atmosphere for you. It's wet, it's windy, you're missing internationals, you have a couple of injuries, and you step up to play a game. That's how you develop leadership as well, where you've got to step up in those games. And Ben is still learning himself, and he's a very talented player. And I think it was a really big performance from him last night. And I think what impressed me more is physically he put his body on the line, an area that he has struggled a little bit in. But overall, his distribution, the ambition to run with the ball as well was very good. So getting the emotional balance right. And I think, without kind of dampening things in any way, because they've got to make sure that they take a lot of good stuff out of that game last night, stuff that worked from their cohesion, their work rate, the defensive line speed, the way they chopped the South Africans at times, the way they worked to get numbers in that defensive line and didn't allow South Africa move the ball, the way they double tackled. There's always things you can improve on, and when they look back, there'll be certain parts of the game that they need to get better in, but they've got to try and translate that into consistency, because you think most of that team last night, that's the team that will be playing when internationals are not available. Maybe there'll be a few back, Jean Klein, Thomas Ahern is out for a period of time. They'll be really hoping to get Snyman back, and Andrew Conway, Keith Earls, they'll play a couple of games, but they'll want to go back with Ireland. So that's the kind of standard they've got to set now. But look, they've got to enjoy last night. It was wonderful to see the players go around the field, kind of get that credit from the supporters, enjoy the night. It was a special occasion. They've had a tough start to the season. There's probably been a lot of long faces in a lot of those dressing rooms in those 5 losses that they've had in the league. So it's a learning curve for them, but I think there's cause to be optimistic, certainly with the way they played. And the coaches deserve credit as well, because they've been working their socks off to try and make them better and make them more of an attacking force. And it wasn't all perfect last night, and they were under pressure for long periods, but it was I think such a much improved performance and an exciting one, and they should enjoy it.
Talk to us about, obviously, the strong squad that's been named for the Ireland-Fiji game this weekend, and certainly a lot of the writing about it this morning, and you find it hard to get past it, is that it may be a case that the ship has sailed for players that might have been expected to have featured in that squad but blotted their copybook a little bit against the All Blacks 15s, and specifically you have to look at the likes of Lowry, Stockdale, Nash, Hume, McCarthy, Coombs. There's almost no chance now again for them to impress before the World Cup.
It's difficult for them, isn't it? I think they'll still be in their own squad and still in Andy Farrell's thoughts, and he won't write them off. So they've got to play well with their provinces now. Every chance they get between here and the Six Nations, and hope for a break, get some consistency. Those derby matches at Christmas, they count for a lot between the four provinces. But yeah, you think there's an opportunity lost there. Someone like Gavin Coombs going back to Munster this week. He was very lucky that he had a game to play against South Africa to kind of switch the focus and get back and play again. But it's a great opportunity for Jeremy Loughman, isn't it? And, Cian Prendergast, Jack Crowley, Nick Timoney, they were all involved in that game. And there was never a case of 8 or 10 of them were going to come straight in for Fiji. This is a bit of a potential banana skin, and these are the ones where I'm talking about that emotional kind of pitch that you've got to get right. Everyone expects us to win. Fiji were, for 40, 50 minutes last week against Scotland, they were very, very good, caused Scotland a lot of problems. Scotland protected the ball much better and stressed them and held on to it for long periods, and then they found gaps and opportunities. But it's a very strong Irish side. But again, it's a tough one for those players that, as you say, historically this was the one that they'd all get an opportunity in. Yeah. But I'm glad Andy Farrell there's a lot of experience and quality in there, as well as, inexperience and players who don't have a lot of caps. Tadhg Furlong, 61 caps playing with Herring, and Loughman is a really kind of a sensible one, because you're putting in that kind of cornerstone of the Irish pack with Herring and Loughman. Obviously Herring has 29 caps for Ireland. He's a very good player. But I think, if you had 3 new changes across the front row, would have put a bit more pressure on Loughman, and, Tadhg Byrne playing in the second row with Treadwell as well. If you put in Joe McCarthy there, then you've 2 kind of non-starters in there. So I think they've got the balance right of the team. Caelan Doris in the back row, and Conan. Conan's a big game for him, big opportunity as well. He'll want to try and get back into that starting team. And dare we say it, Carberry at 10. So, I'm delighted for Stuart McCluskey. I think everyone is. That everyone thought that injury was serious last week, and it's a great chance for him and Henshaw again. So when you go through the team, I think you'd expect all these wholesale changes, but I think there's a lovely mix of really experienced players in there as well.
Quinny, we saw the brilliant clip of Tadhg Furlong chatting to our own Aisling O'Reilly yesterday at the press conference, where clearly moved by getting the captaincy for this game, albeit it's a one-off game. But he talked about his family, what it means to them, and his friends back home in Wexford and everyone. But such a special moment in his career, and again, it's not a full-time captaincy role, but it's something that must mean a lot to a player to get that armband for their country.
Yeah, of course, and I think he's been incredible for a long number of years now, world class, and it's a nice. He's a very humble guy, I think, and does his job so well every week he plays, and finds that fire and that spark to really perform. He's been so consistent, and he's kind of gained the respect of everyone worldwide with his performance. So he's a real natural leader in the team as well, and in the way he goes about his business. So it's a big moment for him, very special moment for him. And who knows, after Johnny hangs up the boots, maybe he will be putting his hand up and looking for the captaincy. So, but it's a special moment for him, his family, his club, tomorrow, and they'll certainly celebrate that.
Just looking forward a little bit, Quinny, as well, with everything that we've been discussing in the mix, and you mentioned particularly maybe the opportunity for the likes of Loughman and maybe Crowley off the bench. Like, it's surely a key indicator that he has them in his considerations for France. With all that in the mix, to project forward a small bit, does Andy Farrell end up showing a full hand against Australia as well, or are you better looking at some of the players that are definitely, for example, or most probably in a 23 for a World Cup game? Like, does he go full bore first 15 pick for Australia, or is there some of the 23 starting?
Possibly some changes. I wouldn't go for wholesale changes. I think they need to finish off the block well, but with Johnny Sexton not being involved this week, He'll be wanting to start next week. He is the team captain. I think there's an argument to look at playing Joey Carbery next week and starting him against Australia and giving him another run out there. I think he's had, up till that France game last year, probably 4 starts against Tier 1 nations teams at fly half. So it'd be great to get a couple of more starts under his belt. But for me, I think 1 or 2 tweaks here and there. You'd love to be in a situation, Adrian, where you're kind of rotating players like for like, and that's the whole beauty that any coach would want to develop in any sport, is to try and get big talking points about certain positions, and then be able to play one week and play a different one the next week, and really kind of have that drive and that kind of motivation to go on and try and hold on to your place. But I don't think we'll see wholesale changes, and I think between here and now it's probably about developing more options. Hence Jeremy Loughman is getting a start. There's a couple of areas, Ian Henderson coming back into that second row shout gives James Ryan, Tyg Byrne, that area a little bit more strength. It's an area of concern for me. I think midfield, there's a lot of, with McCluskey playing so well this year. Chris Farrell is out of the picture at the moment. But, you could argue that Craig Casey probably should be starting this game as well, even though it was a tough night for him behind the pack against the New Zealand side. So, look, you can argue some of them there. But there's a couple of players that may, I wouldn't be against starting him against Australia next week, and you can still have the experienced guy, the regular starter on the bench, to change it up a little bit. And Joe Schmidt did that in 2018, and in the second test in Melbourne against Australia, he made 4 or 5 changes there. His bench player started, so maybe that will happen next week.
Yeah, it might be an ideal prep. Quinny, thanks a million. Going, those chickens aren't going to look after themselves.
They're all done. I'll bring up some eggs for you, Adrian.
A few eggs would be perfect. Good man. Nice free range from Tip. Good man. Cheers, Quinny.